you so much for joining me today. I'm Tracy. Lady in Red reads the Word. And this is going to be one of my short recap videos. And the book is Exodus, chapters 11 through 14. I wanted to just recap a little bit of it. I read to you the complete chapters 11, 12, 13, and 14. I read those chapters to you, and they're downloaded on my YouTube channel on my playlist. So it's going to be, if you want to listen to the entire chapters, you will have to go and find those on my YouTube channel. However, this is just a short recap of chapters 11 through 14, the book of Exodus. And we ended with chapter 10, and we were going over the plagues that the Egyptians were being afflicted with because of Pharaoh's hardened heart. And now we're on chapter 11, and we're at the end of the plagues. However, there will be the final plague. And that final plague is going to be in chapters 12, where Moses warns Pharaoh that God would pass through the country at midnight, and every firstborn son in the land would die. But Moses told the Israelites what God wanted them to do to be spared. He also told the Egyptians what they needed to do to be spared. It was for all of them. The Egyptians, the Israelites, they were all given the opportunity to be spared. Before that death angel came through, they were given the option to spare those firstborn sons. Even the cattle, the firstborn animals, the firstborn children would be killed that night if they didn't follow through with what I'm about to read. Each household was to kill a lamb and smear some of the blood on the door frame and eat the meat in a special way. They were told what to do by Moses, and he was given that by God to tell the people. Pharaoh, however, would not listen. Now, the Egyptians couldn't get rid of the Hebrews quick enough once they woke up that next morning and seen those firstborns dead. The Egyptians couldn't get rid of the Hebrews quick enough that following morning. And so the Hebrews prepared to leave Egypt. And they didn't leave Egypt empty-handed. They didn't leave empty-handed. They were given gold, jewelry. They were given many, many valuable possessions. The Lord told them to give those jewels and possessions to his children, and they did. So now we're going through Exodus 12 through 14. In chapters 12 through 13, the Hebrews are traveling southward across the desert toward the Red Sea. By day, they were given a cloud, a light. By night, they followed a pillar of fire. Yet their troubles were far from over, because in the distance, Pharaoh was hot on their tracks. Pharaoh was not quite finished with trying to retrieve his slaves and bring them back. So the children of Israel were fearful, and they began to complain and murmur to Moses, and he was very upset, so he cried out to the Lord. And he asked the Lord to help him. And the children were telling him, why did you bring us all this way just to have us killed or dragged back into slavery? Cried the terrified Hebrews to Moses. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So Moses cried out to the Lord, as I said a minute ago. He cried out to the Lord, and Moses did not give up his faith in God and stood firm. God will look after us, he said confidently, and he will crush our enemies. And that's just what he did. Because he divided that Red Sea, he made a wall of water so the Egyptians could not see what he was doing on the other side of that wall of water. And God was making a road for his children to cross through on that bare land, the dry land. And that's just what he did. So they're going to be able to cross through that Red Sea on dry ground, because God made a way for his people, and he's gonna save his people. However, it's not going to look so good for the Egyptians, because they're not going to be saved and spared. Because of their rebellions, the hardened heart of Pharaoh, he lost his life, and along with all the other horsemen and soldiers who came with him to try and kill God's people. It's not going to turn out so good for them. So I just wanted to kind of touch base on chapters 11 through 14, 15. And so if you follow up with me, and we're going to continue just having little recaps like this, just so I can sort of keep you up to date on what I'm reading with each chapter. I'm going to be reading the entire chapter on one day, and then I'm going to recap you on what chapters I've read on the next day. So we're going to kind of stay up to date on everything. So thank you so much for listening to me today as I tried to recap you on Exodus chapter 11 through 14. So when we follow up, I'm going to be starting with chapter 15 on Exodus with my recap. So thank you so much for joining me today.